And welcome back to round two of the Prep Football Report. Later on, you'll hear from WLJE play-by-play announcer Todd Eichow. He'll talk Valparaiso football, but then again, that's what this man's job is also. He's the fine defensive coordinator of the Valpo Vikings, Rich Wren. The reason he's here, and we indeed are glad to see you here, it's nice to get one of the assistant coaches on the broadcast, but Mark Hoffman, the coach of Valpo, is a little under the weather, right?
Yeah, Mark took sick yesterday. He's running about 104 temperature, and Doc Stoltz told him that it'd be best for him to rest today, and so he'd be healthy and ready to go for tomorrow night.
So no injured reserve then. He will be in uniform tomorrow.
He'll be in uniform, ready to play.
Good. Tell him, and of course, Coach Hoffman, I'm sure you're watching right now. We wish you nothing but the best of your recovery. Mishawaka, your comments?
Mishawaka is a strong football team. They're ranked 13th in the state. They play in a great conference with Penn. They're a power football team. Brandenburg, they say he's dinged up, but I would imagine being the great athlete that he is, we'll see him a lot tomorrow night. They run a lot of double tight, and they try to put you in 2nd and 4, 3rd and 3 situations and control the ball. They're not a throwing team. They're just a big, strong football team.
Now, we don't want to let the cat out of the bag as far as game plan is concerned. You're the defensive coordinator. You know Brandenburg's their top dog. What do you look for as far as trying to stop a running back whether of that caliber?
Well, basically, we're a gap control defense. That's how we approach all ball games. Definitely our linebackers will key to Brandenburg, but what we can't do is concentrate too heavily on him and then overplay to him and then have some misdirection come back. We'll play our gaps, we'll play strong defense, and hopefully slug it out with them up front.
Second straight year in a row, you have a so-so regular season, nothing to write home about. Then comes the playoffs, and all of a sudden everybody starts salivating. What's the deal?
Well, I think it's a tribute to Mark Hoffman. He's the type of coach, as a head coach, that he feels that it's a learning process from the beginning to the end. Obviously, we'd like to point to the championship of the Doolin, but that fell by the wayside early. But rather than throw it in and give up, Mark feels that we progress every week. We make it fun for the kids. We're trying to teach them. And we feel when we get to the playoffs that we'll have the experience and the necessary attitude, to win. And it's worked out real well for him over the last 14 years.
One young man that's really had a good year for you, especially when you started turning it around, is the quarterback, Utterback.
Yes, Eric. He was a little bit, it was a little bit tough for us early. We were playing some different people. He's taken charge like we felt he could at the beginning of the year. He's run the option real well. The passing attack has come on real well with Brian Pavich, Jim Rose. They're doing a fine job catching the football for us. So Eric is really dominating like we felt he could for the offense.
I would imagine Eric, who started last year, of course, and led you to the semi-state, he had so much senior leadership behind him. Had the 2 senior running backs, Jim Dew being one of them, and an excellent running back. I saw him in the Wallace game, really did a number on the Wallace offense in the first half. Utterback comes back this year. Most of those guys aren't there. He's the guy. I'm sure it takes a while to really, truly pick up that leadership role.
Well, definitely. When we were a more running back-oriented team last year, Eric could sit back there, hand the ball off, and throw when our offense dictated it. This year, when you have to come in and be the focal point, it's a little bit different for him. He's risen to the occasion and has done an outstanding job for us.
And there's no way we're going to let the defensive coordinator get away without talking about the other side of the ball. Let's talk about your defense.
Well, I'll tell you what, we started the year with 2 defensive starters returning, Mike Finley and Matt Stanzak. Mike went down early. He's our secondary quarterback, so to speak, and so we were held with basically 10 new people. They've come on tremendously. We're starting a lot of young kids. Just name them linebackers, Mike Keene. He's a junior for us. He's inside linebacker along with Dave Brown, a sophomore. He's done an outstanding job. Nate McMillan, our starting outside linebacker all year, got dinged up before the Portage ball game. We had a senior step in, Chris McLaughlin, so he's handling that job. Sean Nova's another outside linebacker, does a real fine job for us. Our front 4, Matt Stanzak, which I've mentioned, he's done a fine job. Greg Rosinski, a junior, a 6'5" junior. Big, tall, gangly kid has really come on for us and is holding up inside. Then there's Matt Murphy, the player of the week. He's been sick early in the season. He's shaking that off. He's a 2-way player for us, doesn't come off the field, and he's really dominating. At our left end, we have Chris Wishart, who splits time with Brad Bishop, our tight end, and they do an excellent job back there. In the secondary, again, we have Mike Finley, who's back there at strong safety for us. We have Kevin Heights, who plays the other safety, and out on the wing, we have Jason McDaniels. So as a group of 11, they're playing real well for us right
You're
now.
a very good defensive coordinator. Don't leave out anybody. Make sure you get all the kids in
I
there.
hope I got them all in.
I think you did. I counted 11, so you did a good job.
Okay.
My friend, I appreciate your pinch hitting for Mark
Thank you very
Hoffman.
much.
Wish you luck tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. The fine assistant coach of the Valpo Vikings, Coach Wren, joining us on today's Prep Football Report. It's time for the media workshop. And for more on that, we go back to Mark. Mark?
All right, thanks, Tommy. To my right, Todd Eichow, WLJE in Valparaiso, and Todd has gotten the opportunity to call one of the more interesting football teams in Northwest Indiana this year. Todd, did you really expect that you'd still be calling games in November?
Well, not really, Mark, from the standpoint that they drew Portage in the first game, and the Indians handled the Vikings pretty good in the first game, so you had to give the edge to Portage. They had outplayed the Vikings throughout the regular season, just from standpoint of the teams they played. So it was a bit of a surprise when they knocked off Portage, but Valpo does have a lot of talent. That's the one thing, and they're a young team. They've turned the ball over a lot this year. If you figured in the playoffs, if they stayed away from the turnovers, they'd have a chance to move on, and they did. Plus, they've always played very well in the playoffs, and we see it again, 18-5 over the last 5 years.
Absolutely.
So it's not that big of a surprise, but because they drew Portage, you figured the Indians had the edge, but the Vikings did pull off the upset. Once they got by Portage, they were looking at LaPorte, and certainly talent-wise, Vikings with more talent, and that's why they are where they are right now.
The Portage game had to be interesting because the Indians jumped to a 14-0 lead, if I'm not mistaken. And was there one play or one series of plays in that game that turned things around and got Valpo going back towards the upset?
Well, really, the beginning of the game against Portage looked like the entire season. Portage came up with a couple big plays, an 83-yard touchdown pass, a 65-yard touchdown run, and all of a sudden it was 14-0. And then Portage moved the ball downfield, and we're looking for another score. That would have made it 21-0. On a 3rd and goal, the quarterback went back to pass. He got chased out of the pocket. Big fumble recovery for the Vikings. They took it in, got an interception before the half, took it in again, and it was 14-14 at half, and all the momentum was in the Vikings' favor. One big fumble recovery, a big hit by Mike Keene on Rick Ute. The ball came loose, and that turned the whole playoff season around for the Vikings. And since then, since that fumble, they've outscored their opponents 52-7. So you have to look at that one play as being a huge turnaround, or else the Vikings wouldn't be where they are.
You know, we've talked about, it's been talked about quite a bit, how Valparaiso starts slowly, and a lot of that has to do with the Hobart Brickies playing them in the second game, and then comes back strong and has a very, very good playoff run, as you say, 18-5 the last 5 years. What's the theory? I mean, do you start thinking now that if you lose early in the year, well, hey, it really doesn't matter, we're going to come back anyway? Why does Valparaiso start slowly? Obviously, why they start slowly, because, again, the Brickies in game 2. But how is it they pull it out? How is it they come back and come back stronger? A lot of teams get better as the season goes on, but very few to the extent that Valpo does, where they do so well in the playoffs.
Well, one thing you really have to look at, and you touched on it, is not only Hobart, but the Duneland Conference. Not only perhaps the best conference in Northwest Indiana, but maybe the best conference in the state. And when you go through the Duneland Conference like they do every year, there's a chance you'll be about a 500 team, but still be a very good team. And then their sectional maybe isn't as strong as the other sectional in Northwest Indiana in 5A. They come up against teams that outside the Duneland Conference that they can knock off, or some of the lower echelon teams in the Duneland Conference that they're able to knock off. And that's what happens, it appears. They're able to get through their sectional because the competition isn't quite as strong as the competition they're playing during the regular season. And again, the matter that after they lose to Hobart, you have the problem of, you know, we're down now. Hey, don't worry about it. We have the playoffs to look forward to. We can't win the conference.
They're never overconfident after week 2.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of ways to look at it. Plus, the coaching staff does a good job in preparing this team for the playoffs. And I think Mark Hoffman stresses that the playoffs are the most important thing, especially after you get knocked out of the conference race.
Talking about tomorrow night real quick. Valpo didn't handle the big physical teams until they got to Portage, and then they pretty much they dealt with them pretty well. Against the Mishawaka team tomorrow night that may be a little short-handed, maybe one-dimensional, Valpo has a few injuries too. How do you see that game going? You see it high-scoring, low-scoring? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, Al Smith, the coach of Mishawaka, told me they need to score at least 21 points to win. Which means he thinks that they're going to have a little bit of problem shutting down Valpo.
That's what he's saying,
the offense is clicking right now, 52 points in the last 7 quarters. They have an outstanding quarterback and utterback. They're going to put points on the board against anybody. They've scored against just about every. They've been in double figures in every game but the Hobart game.
Right.
So you have to figure they're going to score points. This is a good test for them. I think the competition that Valpo's played this year is better than the competition that Mishawaka has played, so that's certainly in Valpo's edge. They're the healthiest they've been all season long. Mishawaka is banged up. That another positive in Valpo's favor. So you have to think the Vikings have a pretty good shot at winning this game. You got to figure somewhere around 21-17.
Okay, look, Todd, thanks for coming down. Todd
My
Eichel,
pleasure.
WLJE. He will be in Steel Field, on Steel Field, not on Steel Field, above Steel Field tomorrow night when the Valpo Vikings take on Mishawaka. And there will be plenty of other games on radio all across Northwest Indiana. So we're going to take a little bit of a break now. We're going to show you just exactly what you can hear as far as high school football is concerned in Northwest Indiana coming up tomorrow night.